Well, I started learning to skate there when I was 5 years old, and I took to it like a duck to water and was given a pair of skating boots, and it just went on from there. I took lessons from a gentleman called Joe Baskin and used to compete in competitions up at Wembley and all the odd little competitions we used to have at the Westover. Used to have great delight in giving exhibitions, and the fun was receiving all the lovely bouquets at the end of the evening, you know, when we'd all done our little bits and pieces.
How about the Ice Follies?
Oh, the Ice Follies, yes. I became a member of the Ice Follies in 1960, and well, I mean, it was my dream come true, because I was really in show business then, and that had been my dream from a very small child. And I took part in, I think it was about 10 ice shows altogether, and I started off in the chorus and eventually made my way up to semi-principal, I should say, and did some pair skating and even a little bit of singing in one of the shows. So it was just wonderful.
When you started the shows,
Yeah.
did it feel like really big razzmatazz?
Oh yes. Sequins, feathers, lovely costumes, music, orchestra. Oh, it was just divine. I loved going to work every single day. I loved rehearsals, I loved the show, I loved the smell of the ice, the feel of the audience. Oh, just terrific. I can truly say, with all the professional entertaining that I've done, my days in Ice Follies and Westover Ice Rink were the happiest. And I have had some wonderful days in entertainment, working with wonderful stars and things, but my days at the ice rink, nothing will ever match up to it. Nothing.
Some of the people you met while you were skating.
Oh, well, where should we start? How about the skating chimpanzee? When we heard he was coming, we thought, oh yes, you know. Anyway, when he arrived, of course, he got on the ice and he skated. And it was fun, but it was more fun backstage, because they used to keep him in this great big box. And he learnt how to jump and move the box. And he would jump it right in front of the girls' dressing room. So when we came to dash to go out onto the ice, we couldn't get on the ice. Or we'd be stood waiting to go on. We'd find our boots had been undone. That was just one of the ones. Then we had the barrel jumper, the wonderful barrel jumper, and I was one of the assistants who helped him. And one night he had all the barrels piled up very, very high, and we did all the razzmatazz of presenting him and the music, and he came round and he made his jump and he missed them. And they went everywhere, all over the ice. He landed up by the barrier, his skate in the barrier, and they used to wear the long skates in those days, not the hockey ones, but the speed skates. And eventually he got his foot out in the audience, oohing and eyeing and one thing and another. And Joy and I went and we got all the barrels piled up again, and we did the da-da. He comes all the way around and he suddenly stops. And he looks at me and he goes, me? Yes, and he made me lay on the top of these barrels. And then he went all the way around and he jumped over the top of me. And that was an on-the-spot reaction of what happened. There was nothing fixed, it was not in the show. And I said to him afterwards, I said, what on earth do you think you were doing? And he said, well, I knew I couldn't miss with you on the top. And I thought, oh, great. But that's the daring things that I would do. I wouldn't think, I'd just go and I'd do it.
Over your time, you must have met some fairly famous skaters.
Michael Carrington, for instance, and of course he had a brother as well who were both in the shows. We had a lot of foreign skaters, but I don't know whether people were actually going to remember them. This is the thing, because of course we didn't have television to expose us to the public, and they weren't what I would have called big names. They all came from Garmisch, where John Neal used to go over and source them from, and they weren't stars as we know stars today. They weren't like Torval and Dean and things like that. So, I mean, Gordon Holloway was very famous in our day, and Hammy Brown, but they will really only be known to the skating world, of course.
How about the ice rink? It's now 25 years since the ice rink went. How do you feel now that the ice rink has gone?
Sad. Very, very sad. I go down, I look up at those windows, and I imagine walking in and up the stairs, getting ready to go on to teach or whatever I was going to do. To me, it's a great sadness, and it should be back in Bournemouth. It's the one good thing that will keep our families together, keep the children fit, keep the family fit. It's a good, clean, open activity for all, and it's got to come back to Bournemouth.
I believe the manager at the time was something of a taskmaster.
Oh yes, dear John Neal. Yes, he was a taskmaster. And he had his rules, and we stuck to those rules. And one of the rules I remember very, very clearly was you do not sit down in your costumes. You do not do it. You have respect for what you are wearing. You have respect for the show. And I think I learnt so much from him. There were times we used to think, oh God, here he goes again, another note on the board, what have we done this time? But looking back over it now, in all the other things that I've done in the theatre and on television, the rules that he laid down to me, like the commandments, I've always kept, and it has kept me in good stead for everything I've done.
What was it like when you were preparing the shows, and when you actually came to do the shows? How strong was the discipline?
Oh, the discipline was very strong. We always knew that at the end of First House, Mr. Neal would be in. Actually, we used to call him Father, so we'd whisper to one another, Father's in, watch it. And if, for instance, taking my own case, there was one particular spin I couldn't do. It was a layback spin, which he wanted me to put in my programme, so it had to be there. And one night I just couldn't do it. When I came off the ice, he was waiting for me. Maeve, why didn't you put that spin in tonight? Sorry, Mr. Neal, but so-and-so and so-and-so. So that was the discipline. He knew everything that we did. He knew all the routines. He knew who should be with what. He knew what came after, what music. And yes, it did seem tough, but if you really loved what you did and you loved the discipline, then you did it. And that, I think, is what is lacking in a lot of show business today. The kids haven't learned from the bottom. They come in off these entertainment shows, these X Factors and what have you. They don't know the business at all. And they last, 5 minutes? And I think that's so sad. Learn your craft.
What about if you weren't feeling very good? It must have been very hard to do some of the shows.
The show must go on. And me personally, I had to be very ill. I even went on with a cracked bone in my arm once because I wouldn't stay off. And I got the hospital to put me on a flesh-coloured bandage so that I didn't have to miss the show. That's how dedicated I was. And that's how dedicated we were in those days. If we had a cold, if we had a cough, a sore throat, we went on. The show came first. And there you are. That's why Ice Follies was so good. And people, we'd see them standing up on the seats all around those beautiful windows because there wasn't a seat, but they were waiting outside to come in, so we were allowed so many standing room. And there's nothing more wonderful to an artist than to have that appreciation at the end of the show. With all the clapping and everything. And I think going back to my childhood now, when the ice shows used to be on, we used to be allowed in at 10 o'clock when the ice shows finished. So there would be me and two or three of my friends, like Margaret Kingsbury, and we'd go down at 10 o'clock. We had our little dresses on, and the show would end, the lights would go up, the orchestra was still there, and we would go on the ice and have our little skate. And the orchestra would play for us. And of course, because we were tiny and both of us were quite talented, we really gave them a lovely little performance. And that's what got inside me and spurred me, yes, this is what I want to do. And I've never ever wavered from that. That's what I wanted to do. And I've been very fortunate because I've never had a day that I've never wanted to go to work because I have loved my profession so much.
Tell me some of the characters you skated with.
Oh, one of my most favourites got to be Jackie Vincent. He skated at the ice rink, he was in a lot of the early shows, he played Dame, he did all sorts of comedy stuff. And then in latter years, he moved into the theatre and he did a lot of cabaret work. And I was very fortunate enough to be asked to work in cabaret with him. And we used to have a real laugh because he has the same love for what he does as I do. And he also had a pancake parlour, and I would go and help him in the pancake parlour. This was up at the Triangle in Bournemouth. And we would spend ages in the kitchen working out what the next cabaret was going to be. And a little secret I'll tell you, he might not want you to know, you can cut it out if you want to, but it used to get so hot in the kitchen at the pancake parlour, he'd be in there tossing pancakes in his underpants and a shirt. It was wonderful.